Testing. Testing one, two, three. Yes, this is the many options to Machu Picchu Masterclass, hosted by Boutique South America. Now, I just want to check that we are live. So, if you could just pop into the chat box and say hi, there should be a chat box on the corner next to this video. Let me know where you're watching this from. I just want to make sure that we're all good technically and good to go and make sure we're not missing out on anything because of any tech issues. Yeah, so just to start off, first, I wanted to welcome you. It's so great to have you here on the masterclass. And just to get us going, I was going to give people a few minutes to join us. I know 7:30 in the evening is a busy time, so I appreciate you making the time this evening to join us live on this call. Or if you're going to get a recording of this later on, that's great too. But yes, while we'll give few minutes, everyone a few minutes to join us. So I just thought we'd go through a few quick facts about Machu Picchu because that's what we're all talking about here today. So Machu Picchu is considered the lost city of the Incas. It is a mighty complex filled with various buildings, temples, and there is even running water going through the actual site. And it's set on a mountaintop in Peru. Now, this site itself was dormant for many centuries. It is estimated to have been built in the 16th century, but it was never actually discovered by the Spanish colonialists and only found by the explorer Hiram Bingham in 1911. So just delete that little bit there. So actually, it wasn't too many years ago that we celebrated the 100th anniversary of when Machu Picchu itself was discovered. So that was only about 7 years ago. Now, at Machu Picchu is a historic sanctuary and it has an area of more than 32,000 hectares, um, which surprises most people because when you go there, it is absolutely huge. It's one of the most, visited sites in, well, definitely in South America, but even the world in terms of the amount of passengers that visit it daily. But at the same time, even with all those people in it, it still feels massive. So to give you an idea of sort of what that translates to, it's 95 times the size of New York's Central Park. So if that's somewhere that you've actually been before, and it's quite a large park in the city, and that gives you some bearings, it's nearly 100 times bigger than that. So just to give you some perspective. Now, there's still a lot of mystery surrounding the reason why Machu Picchu was built. There's several theories going around, of course, as there always are with a lot of these archaeological ruins, especially given that, in terms of nothing was ever sort of written or documented by the Incas. So there wasn't like a form of writing or anything like that that we can go back and refer to. So a lot of this is still quite academic and, sort of speculative at this stage. But what's amazing about it is in terms of how it was actually constructed. Because when you see the site itself, it is massive. It was constructed without the use of wheels, iron, or steel. Um, but at the same time, the stonework that has been used, and there is a particular style in how uh, the stones themselves were cut. And it's so precisely cut. I mean, mortar or anything like that wasn't used to stick between them. They basically just sit and fit into each other side by side perfectly. And this whole temple, what's really amazing about it is that it has actually survived centuries in what is really quite an earthquake prone region. So, as you're set in the Andes itself is located on a fault line. So it's called the Nazca Plate. So yeah, countries like Peru and Chile, they do have quite a bit of sort of movement and earthquake activity sort of over the years. Have had quite big earthquakes. So that's one of the really fascinating things about how Machu Picchu is even still there and still exists and in all its glory. I think by now we've probably had whoever's going to join us has probably joined us by now. So let's get into the masterclass itself. First, let me introduce myself. My name is Catherine Garces. My tour company is Boutique South America, and we're a specialist in related to travel in this region, the region of South America, of course. Our mission is to help travelers explore the southern continent in the best possible way for them. We believe that every traveler is different and deserves a holiday experience that's unique to them. So for us, it's not just about getting you to South America, it's about helping you find the best way to explore it, which often comes down to helping you choose the best option for you based on the hundreds of possibilities available. So South America is a really big continent. There's so many ways to travel and explore it and different things and different ways of seeing certain things that it's all about making your holiday more about you. So I've personally traveled to Machu Picchu, and I've also sent hundreds of travelers in my time as a journey consultant to discover this various site in many different ways. So not only am I well aware of the different ways to see Machu Picchu, but I understand how important your travel choices and how you actually go about exploring it is to the ultimate, enjoyment of your travels themselves. A bit more about the Boutique South America philosophy. So, Boutique South America is a travel company that focuses on maximizing the experiences of every traveler that it serves. We believe the best kind of travel is personal and helps clients create trips that matter to each traveler by tailoring it towards their interests and passions. We adopt a slow travel philosophy of more time in less places, so your experience is less rushed and more fulfilling. It's very much a quality over quantity approach. We also use character and boutique style hotels where possible to make your stay as rewarding as what you do. Now, the reason why we have a preference for boutique style hotels is that we don't believe that, everywhere that you should stay should actually look the same. I mean, it's a bit of a disservice, I think, when you stay in one country and the inside of the hotel or the lobby or your room looks exactly the same as it would in a complete other country on the other side of the world, in another culture, and there's no sort of reference or frame. As much as, we have different hotel styles that vary from about 3.5 star to 5 plus in terms of, luxury. We definitely believe that it's, where you stay can have an impact on your overall trip. And it's nice to sort of feel the vibe and feel like where you are based on where you're actually staying. And a lot of these boutique style hotels, whilst they may be smaller, it's all about sort of a personalized service and approach. So you're not just another number going through a big chain hotel or anything like that. A lot of the times it is very, sort of special in terms of the actual personal experience that you'll go through. Okay, so in this masterclass, we'll be covering the absolute basics you need to know about traveling to Machu Picchu. So things like how to get there, things to consider when traveling these regions, essentially your Machu Picchu travel must-knows. We'll dissect the many different options available to travel to Machu Picchu, which was the theme and name of this class. So the idea is we'll explain a little about each of them and sort of go through quickly what the positives and negatives are of each way of exploring, just to give you a better idea about them. We will also go through the key factors to find your ideal experience of Machu Picchu. These are the things that most travel experts know will make the most difference when deciding how you should travel to one of the wonders of the world. And stay tuned to the end because we'll have some great offers to actually help you get to Machu Picchu sooner as well. So let's start with your Machu Picchu travel basics. What's the deal with high altitude? Now, one of the questions that probably as travel experts we get asked the most around, and it seems to create a lot of confusion for travelers who want to go to Machu Picchu or Peru, um, is basically sort of getting that understanding around if you when you travel to Machu Picchu, it means that you will be going through a high altitude region. Now, what does this mean exactly, and why does everyone keep talking about it, and why is it important to know? Well, high altitude essentially means any region above 2,700 meters above sea level. And as Peru has the Andes Mountains running through it, there are some significantly high points you'll be crossing and reaching as high as potentially 3,300 meters above sea level. What happens at high altitude is that because the oxygen up so high in the mountains is thinner, it essentially means that less oxygen is traveling through your body, meaning this can have side effects which are mild, such as shortness of breath, headaches, migraines. You might get some sort of strange little tinglings in your hands, and you'll sort of feel a little bit, maybe a little bit sort of dizzy. But it can also range to severe effects, which can actually be harmful to your long term health. Not to worry, because unless you have a respiratory or heart condition, you should still be okay to travel to this region. There are various things you can do to limit the effects of high altitude, such as staying hydrated, drinking lots of water, of course, in the lead up to on arrival into a high altitude region, as well as possibly the night before you fly into it is always a good idea. The same thing, avoiding alcohol before you reach high altitude and possibly on your first night, uh, because obviously alcohol is going to dehydrate you. So the more water you have, the better that you will actually be able to absorb the oxygen that's going around. Um, and most importantly, you need to give your body time to adjust. And a lot of this means giving yourself a day or two to ease into staying into a high altitude region. It's quite important. So the thing about high altitude too is that with so many travelers visiting Peru and some of these high altitude areas, most hotels and things like that are uh, quite well equipped to deal with things like this. A lot of hotels themselves have access access to their own sort of oxygen machine or device that you might be able to actually just hook yourself up to for an hour. There are some hotels that actually have oxygenated rooms, so your room will have extra oxygen, so you should be able to adjust a little bit easier. There are altitude sickness tablets that you can start taking that you can actually get from a travel doctor as well. So there's lots of little things that you can. So the important thing is to be aware that you're traveling through a high altitude region and obviously take precautions. But we always say that unless there's a reason, and this has a lot to do particularly with heart and respiratory, sort of issues. If you've got an existing medical condition relating to that, that's when we need to be concerned. And it's always a good idea to go and check with not just a travel doctor, but also your general practitioner, the one who probably knows your own medical history as well, as they'll be able to advise whether you can or can't travel to this region. And it's always a good idea to sort of do that at the start of the process when you're thinking about traveling to South America or Peru. I've worked with, clients beforehand who, yes, we had everything booked and everything was lovely. And then we sort of did this months in advance, possibly more than 6 months in advance, and sort of had booked everything around, not just before going to Machu Picchu, but afterwards. And then, maybe a month or two out from when they actually traveled, they decided to visit the doctor. And because of, a particular pre-existing medical condition, they were told that they couldn't travel. So it meant that we had to, because a lot of things had already been booked, paid for, flights, everything like that, we had to change their whole itinerary and find an alternative thing to do. So it's one of those things that you probably want to know up front before you sort of make too many different, sort of commitments either way, as it could just get a little bit trickier and also a little bit disappointing if you find out only a month, before you can actually travel, that you can't actually go there and you've probably already been looking forward to it for some time. So it's just a really good idea to do that beforehand. So how do you actually get to Machu Picchu? Where do you start from? So just so you know from the outset, there is no airport close to Machu Picchu, or it's not really accessible directly from the airport. You can't sort of fly in, fly out. So what you need to do is the first thing you need to do is arrive into Cusco in Peru. So that will be your gateway city. So Cusco is accessible from most other airports in Peru. So most people will normally fly into Lima International Airport, or some other airports, such as from if you're visiting the Amazon beforehand or something like that. And then you can connect to the city of Cusco, which is CUZ, is the city code. And while it's also possible to access getting into Cusco by land, so one of the popular ways is to come through Puno, which is a city on the shores of Lake Titicaca on the Peruvian side from Bolivia. And you can either travel by road from there, it's about an 8 to 9 hours road journey, or a train service, which is it's either 10 hours or it's 2 days on a luxury sleeper train. So there's a couple of different ways to get into Cusco, and these are the most popular. Um, there are quite a few itineraries and ways of getting into Peru that sort of combine like the countries of Bolivia and Peru together. So they'll start in Bolivia and finish in Peru. Now, we generally don't recommend this, mainly because of the aforementioned high altitude. So Bolivia is actually even higher than Cusco to arrive into. So actually flying into La Paz will probably you're almost guaranteed to get some form of, definitely feel the altitude. And we always think it's better to actually work an itinerary to go from lower points of altitude and slowly build up your tolerance, and in that way helping you acclimatize, rather than flying into somewhere La Paz and then going backwards the other way. So going to the highest point and then traveling down, unless it's absolutely necessary, unless you have to do it. There's no other way to schedule your itinerary around that. But ideally, it works the other way around. And once you've arrived into Cusco, which is the ancient Inca capital, you need to decide where to base yourself. So we'll go into this a little bit further later on. But essentially, you'll have two main options to do this before Machu Picchu or afterwards. So Cusco is the ancient Inca capital. It is a high altitude region. And or the other option is to head a little bit further, which is maybe 1 to 2 hours away from Cusco, and stay in the Sacred Valley of the Incas. So the Sacred Valley of the Incas is very scenic, sort of mountainous range of valleys, where a lot of sort of local Andean communities will live as well. And you've got those sort of two options to pick from, but we'll go into them and which one is better a little bit later. So, just a quick note, it's not really possible to head to Machu Picchu immediately after your arrival into Cusco for a number of reasons. A lot of itineraries in terms of Machu Picchu, they're kind of between about 4 to 6 days, but they can be longer depending on if you're doing sort of a longer program as well. And a lot of people sort of want to do this as part of a longer journey in South America, which is fair enough. There's so much to see in South America, but and the question I get asked a lot is, can I spend less time there? But what we're actually dealing with is that you're sort of dealing with really sort of long distances. So even though you might arrive in Cusco in the morning, the actual trains to reach Machu Picchu depart quite early in the morning as well. So your chances of making it after a flight are quite unlikely because A train journey from Cusco to Machu Picchu itself is close to, 3 to 4 hours. So flying in, boarding a train, catching a train to Machu Picchu is quite a long journey itself. And as we mentioned before, because this is a high altitude region, it's really not recommended to do something like that. We always recommend staying 2 nights in either Cusco, the city, or the mountains of the Sacred Valley before heading to Machu Picchu, because this gives your body time to adjust. So trying to fly in there in one day is not a good idea and not something that you really want to be doing. Okay, so what are the many different options to travel to Machu Picchu, which is what this masterclass is all about? Yes, there is definitely more than one way to discover the magnificent Machu Picchu. There are several. I think we've counted, I think just more than 10 for this one, but obviously, depending on other combinations, there may be a few other treks that we haven't mentioned. But all of them are different and they offer a slightly different experience in terms of what you will see, what you will, have an opportunity to do in terms of excursions and, in terms of the nature and surrounding that you'll actually come across. So some of the differences between different programs are large, some are more subtle. However, each way you choose to travel Machu Picchu will mean a different kind of adventure. Now, essentially, I guess we've divided this program into how you reach Machu Picchu and then the different options within each of those. So there are two main ways to reach Machu Picchu. The first and most popular way to reach Machu Picchu is actually by train. It's interesting because many people automatically think that you have to trek to Machu Picchu, but that is definitely not the case, and it's definitely not the most popular way that people actually get there. I would say, close to 90% of travelers are actually going by train. At least, at least to reach there. And in terms of trains, there are several different train types and comfort levels you can choose from, depending on your budget as well. Now, there are two train companies that operate this route from Cusco to Aguascalientes, which is the name of the town that is below Machu Picchu. And just so you know that the train journey is actually quite a scenic one because it essentially weaves its way through the mountains of the Sacred Valley of the Incas and onwards to find Machu Picchu. Peru Rail, which is the first company we'll look at, has been operating their service from 1999 and offers three kinds of different rail journeys with three different levels of service. They have the Expedition train, the Vista Dome, and the Hiram Bingham train. Now, just to give you an idea of the route that is taken by Peru Rail, first you'll start in Cusco, which is probably a little bit more out here based on this map, but you'll be transferred by road to Paroi station. So this is about 18k from Cusco City, so it'll probably take you between 20 to 30 minutes to get there, depending on the time of the day that you leave, of course. And from there, you'll actually board the train, which goes through the mountains of the Sacred Valley, passes through the Urubamba station. So there are two stations in the Sacred Valley. So the first is Urubamba, which is one side of the Sacred Valley. And then the second station that you can actually board it at from the Sacred Valley of the Incas is Ollantaytambo station, which is a bit of a mouthful, but um, that's what it's called. From there, the train continues at the end of the train ride, which is at Machu Picchu station, is at Aguascalientes, the town that we mentioned before. And what happens here is because this is actually by the river, you will then need to board a bus, which is what this little figure is for, that will take you all the way up to the mountains and the entrance of the sanctuary and the ruins themselves. So it's about a short 20 to 30-minute bus ride up to reach the ruins at the top of the mountain. So that's essentially the journey that most Most people will take by train with either company. So what's important to note is that obviously the distances between traveling to Machu Picchu, we mentioned before, are a bit long, but the total journey time from Cusco is, is 3 hours and 50 minutes, so basically closer to 4 hours. But if you actually do the train trip from Ollantaytambo station itself, it's only about 1 hour and 40 minutes, so about 1.5 hours. So it is significantly shorter to do that from here. Now, and this is how the program works, I guess, in the regular or sort of, I guess, dry season. But what happens between the wet season, which is, sort of January to April-ish, this train journey will be altered slightly. So it becomes what they call a bimodal service. So normally what's happening is that trains are getting maintained between Cusco and the Sacred Valley. So this is when they're doing their sort of, I guess, off-peak maintenance. And so a bus service will operate in between these sections. So you'll have to do a bus service from Cusco to Ollantaytambo anyway, and then board it. So just so you know that this is the main route. There are some alterations based on weather and things like that, but this is essentially, how it works in terms of catching the train to Machu Picchu. Now, as we mentioned before, Peru Rail, the first company, has three types of trains. So the Expedition train, the Vista Dome train, and the Here and Bingham train. Now, all three train services offer grand windows, especially ones on the Expedition and Vista Dome, which you'll see here. Like you've got windows sort of going along the top of the ceiling, which actually is really great because as you're traveling through the mountains, you get views of, sort of not just sort of panoramic views this way, but you can actually see high up above you. So it's quite visually stunning. But there are other differences between the three different train types on Peru Rail. So the Expedition train is essentially their economy service. It's the most basic in terms of decor, snacks, and the inclusions that has on board. Now, the Vista Dome is, I guess, considered the main tourist train. It's the one that we use most regularly to get people to Machu Picchu. It has larger windows, more leg room between seats and things like that, and it offers a more substantial snack on board. Remembering, obviously, the journey can be between an hour and a half to 4 hours, so they do actually give you a snack on board on this level of train. Now, the here in Bingham itself, that is the luxury train. So five-star rail, it's been designed in the style of, sort of the iconic Pullman sort of steam trains that sort of exist, in other parts of the world. It has that sort of similar old world luxury type of feel. It offers a fine dining lunch or dinner on board, including wines. Obviously, there's more plush seating. It has a bar car towards the end. And just outside of this, you also have an observation car towards the end of the train. So if you want to step outside and actually look at the scenery from there as well, you're not forced to stay in your seat or anything like that. You've got these additional lounge areas where you can sort of, chill out as you're traveling. Now, Incorail is the other company that operates trains down this route. It's a newer player in terms of the services, but it uses similar routes to sort of what we showed before. So Incorail offers four different train types. We've got the Voyager train, the 360-degree Machu Picchu train, the first class Machu Picchu train, and then we also have a private Machu Picchu train as well. Now, all of these trains operate from Ollantaytambo in the Sacred Valley to Aguas Calientes station. So they do the shorter option of the route, and only the 360 Machu Picchu train operates from both the Puroi station and Ollantaytambo. So just to give you an idea, it is a bit more of a longer bus. It's sort of half by bus, half by train. Is how most of these trains actually work. So the is the entry-level train option with the most basic service. The 360-degree and first-class Machu Picchu train ones offer additional refreshments on board. They both they both have an observation car or lounge that you can relax in as well. Whereas the private Machu Picchu is only reserved and only really available as a charter service. So if you're traveling potentially in a larger group or something like that, you might reserve that whole train for yourselves. So it's less likely you'll be on this one, but definitely these are the main options for you. So as you can see, there are a number of different factors to choose between, even just in terms of trains to and from Machu Picchu. So, um, and whilst there are several services, some only operate, well, that most of them operate most days, but there may only be one service a day for some of them. So there is a limited capacity in terms of actually getting to and from Machu Picchu, depending on which ones. So the best advice really is to book in advance, particularly if there's a service in mind that you have particular in mind, or you want, say, sort of a luxury experience or something like that. Those are the kind of services that will, sort of, I guess, be sold a little bit quicker. Um, Another way to spice up your Machu Picchu experience is to actually mix and match um, your train experience. What I mean by that is, so obviously you've got to get to Machu Picchu and come back. So the idea is if you can half what you're doing, you'll get a different experience each time. So say, for example, on the way to Machu Picchu, you did a Vistadome train service, which we talked about, is the tourist train. So that's, kind of, I guess, a regular sort of train service. But then on your way back, you might choose to actually upgrade to the luxury experience instead. So that way, each way that you get to Machu Picchu or from Machu Picchu, it's a different experience. So it's not just the same on the way there and back. Now, how does this actual train trip fit into your overall journey? The first way to travel to Machu Picchu by train is to do it as part of a full day trip. You can board the train there and back, have lunch, and be taken on a guided tour of the ancient citadel of Machu Picchu. So most of these trains depart daily. There are a few exceptions with some of the luxury trains. But this isn't a way that we would generally recommend it unless you are very short on time. Once again, as we mentioned, from Cusco, it can be an 8-hour return journey by train. From the Sacred Valley, it'll be about 6 hours return trip. So most of the trains depart quite early in the morning. I think when I was there, I was up at around like 5 o'clock, so we could get to the station at 5 a.m. to get to the station on time. So it can make it a very long day, very long and tiring day. And you've got a high altitude to deal with as well. So um, the full day trip is a lot shorter, obviously, if you're staying in the Sacred Valley, so it might be a better option from there, a bit more reasonable. But generally, unless you absolutely have to do this trip, we wouldn't recommend doing it as a full day necessarily. Our preference, and the more common way to head to Machu Picchu, the way we generally recommend to most of our clients actually, most of our travelers, is to do part of this as I guess, a 2-day, 1-night program. So where rather than return on the train the same day that you arrive in Machu Picchu, you get to stay overnight and return the following day. The advantages of doing this are that you'll arrive, you'll sort of do your train trip, you'll do a tour of the site itself, then you can have some extra free time there if you want to wander around. And then you can stay overnight in Aguascalientes. You can either stay in town or there's a hotel just outside the hotel entrance. But the advantage is that if you really want to go back the next day, and some people do, the main reasons being is that when you go back the next day, you'll get a totally different experience than on the day that you arrive. Because obviously, when you're arriving by train, you will probably arrive with lots of other passengers at the same time. So the ruins themselves will be quite busy. You'll probably arrive midday-ish or around there. and it'll be quite a busy site. So when you go back the following day, and it's definitely something that I did and I recommend to people, is that I managed to catch the first bus, which was at around 6 a.m., to go up, see the ruins, and it's a lot more of a sort of a personal experience as well. So you don't have anywhere near as many people around. The only people that are sort of around at that time are the trekkers, who get to Machu Picchu when there's only about 500 or so of them, if they're all there at the same time that you are. And the other thing that you can do is, I mean, if you're a bit more adventurous, there is a climb that is possible. Huayna Picchu is sort of, when you see some of the photos taken of Machu Picchu and you can actually see the whole site itself rather than being in the whole site itself, those pictures are the ones that are taken from Huayna Picchu. So it is a bit of a climb, it is a bit of a steep climb to do this, but it is possible to do this if you're willing. So it's not something to be attempted if you're afraid of heights, because it can be quite steep, but obviously the views from up there are very distinct. This all needs to be pre-purchased and everything like that, but it's another way to see this incredible archaeological icon. And obviously, if you can go twice, you basically won't be rushed. Okay, so rather than just doing an overnight trip to Machu Picchu from Cusco, an alternative is to combine to do this and start this instead from the Sacred Valley of the Incas, if we're going to do a trip to Machu Picchu. Um, the Sacred Valley is an incredibly scenic and lush mountain region. It's home to many Andean villages, and it's from here that you can actually explore and see how a lot of the local um, villagers actually live. And there are also other attractions such as the salt pans of Maras and other Inca sites as well, like Marai, which is this one. One of the advantages of doing this, staying in the Sacred Valley rather than Cusco, is that it is lower in altitude. So once again, we talk about sort of giving your body enough time to adjust. The Sacred Valley is actually lower than Machu Picchu itself as well, so, and Cusco. So that's a good sort of introduction to do that, because it's easier to adjust and breathe in this mountainous region, potentially reducing the impact that thinning oxygen has on your body. And also, as I mentioned before, the train trip from Sacred Valley into Machu Picchu is a lot shorter as well. So what does this mean? Um, what does it actually look like if you're thinking of training it to Machu Picchu in terms of your overall trip plan? So this is a sample itinerary, because basically this is what it'll end up looking like, and it'll also explain why we need as many days as we need to explore Machu Picchu. So in this itinerary, we've sort of got day 1 to 2. You've got a choice of either staying in Cusco or the Sacred Valley, and using that time to actually explore some of the region around that. We recommend on day 3, and no earlier necessarily, that you decide to head to Machu Picchu. Ideally, with an overnight in Aguascalientes. That's the way that we advise most tourists to actually travel to Machu Picchu. So we do the overnight. So we catch the train, we stay overnight. On day 4, you will return to either Cusco or the Sacred Valley, depending on what you did. So, for example, you can stay in the Sacred Valley first and then finish off with Cusco, or the other way around. You can start in Cusco, finish in the Sacred Valley on the way back. And so you can spend day 5 or day 6 either exploring wherever you've decided to stay, Cusco or the Sacred Valley, or head out to the airport for your last day. So this is why we would recommend 5 or 6 days really to explore this region. So I guess this brings us back to the question, is it better to stay in the Sacred Valley or Cusco before and after you visit to Machu Picchu? So a little bit more about each of these regions to help you answer that question if the train is something that might be of interest to you. It's an important question to ask where you want to stay before and after, because how you combine this all together can actually make your experience a bit more distinct to somebody else's experience. Machu Picchu itself is what most travelers' ultimate goal is. It's the final destination, and deservedly so. But it's often these other places along the way along the way or afterwards that form part of the overall journey. So, you know that quote, it's the reward is in the journey, not the destination. This is exactly what we're talking about. Because what you do before and after can make your Peruvian experience absolutely unique. There are advantages and disadvantages of staying in either Cusco or the Sacred Valley. Um, in Cusco, the experience is a bit different because it is a city. Well, it's not an enormous city like the capital Lima. It was an Inca capital, so there, obviously there's a lot of buildings and houses and things like that heading into the hills. But it is a city that, because it was an Inca capital, has many visible Inca influences. So, and the great thing about it is that you can actually walk around and explore it quite easily. So you can visit a lot of the many museums and ruins themselves that are in town, you know, a lot of things are within walking distance. So, for example, this is the main cathedral in Cusco. It is based in the Plaza de Armas, which is the main central plaza in Cusco. So, definitely worth checking out and looking at. Up here as well, we've got this is Coricancha, the Temple of the Sun. So we even have temples and Inca ruins in the city itself that you can walk in, and they can serve as a really good introduction to before you go into Machu Picchu and check if you can check those out. As a city, there are definitely more hotel options. Um, to choose from, everything ranging from hostels to 3 stars to 5 stars and beyond, and really lush hotels. And the great thing about most of the hotels is if you book a hotel that is within probably a couple of blocks of this main central plaza, a lot of things will be walking distance and it will be very easy to get around for you as well. And obviously it's a city that's quite colourful. So as you can see, we've got sort of cobblestone streets. This is an Inca an old Inca wall that's built there, and sometimes you can actually see a lot of the handiwork in some of the buildings that were built once upon a time. So it's a really nice sort of walk around. Obviously, you've got a lot of colourful people around and things like that. The disadvantages, obviously, and it's something that we've mentioned before, is that Cusco is a lot further away from Machu Picchu by train, so close to 4 hours. The city is higher in altitude, so it can take a bit more time to adjust here as well, or you might feel the effects a little bit more of high altitude than if you were to stay in the Sacred Valley. The other alternative to staying in the city of Cusco is to stay in the Sacred Valley of the Incas. As we mentioned, the Sacred Valley of the Incas is very mountainous, but it's quite a beautiful region actually. Um, it has, the advantages are that, you've got lower altitude, even though it looks you're in the mountains themselves. They're located a bit lower than Cusco is. It's closer to different attractions as well. So you've got things like the salt mines of Maras here, other Inca ruins such as Moray or Ollantaytambo, which is an old Inca fortress. You've got things like markets. So we've got both the Pisac and the Chinchero markets, which are, pretty cool, it can be quite traditional and good to walk around. Some of the disadvantages, however, of staying in the Sacred Valley are that, unlike Cusco, it's not really a place where there's so much within walking distance. A lot of the hotels can be quite isolated. But that also makes it quite an intimate experience because often you'll have your hotel and you won't see anything around but these beautiful mountainous valleys like this. So you'll get a lot more sort of a feeling of the landscape if you're staying in the Sacred Valley rather than in Cusco itself. Of course, Sacred Valley itself is closer by train to Machu Picchu, um, but obviously it can take a little longer to reach there on your arrival day. So the Sacred Valley is located, depending on where your hotel is based, it can add an extra 1 to 2 hours after your flight in Cusco. So if you do want to stay in the Sacred Valley, we would recommend you actually, sort of arrive. Probably before midday is a good idea, realistically. Now, another way to discover Machu Picchu, although there's sort of a bit of a combination of using both the train and trekking programs, is to stay in a lodge-based program or experience a lodge-based adventure. So, what these programs do is they will still use the train or a trek. There's one that actually involves a trek, but instead they will actually base you at an adventure lodge in the Sacred Valley beforehand. What makes these adventure lodges so special is they're a new way um, in this region of the world, anyway, to combine a deeper exploration of the beauty and culture of the Sacred Valley of the Incas. So we tend to use sort of experiential, we like to call them experiential lodge-based stays in other sort of really remote parts of South America. So I'm talking places like Patagonia, maybe the Atacama Desert. And this means that you'll have a number of different days to explore the surrounds of the Sacred Valley before continuing on to Machu Picchu. The programs will still use the train option to get you there, and this can be included or additional to what you're sort of actually paying for. There are currently 3 lodge-based programs, actually 2 lodge-based programs, and there are only 2 lodge-based programs, and they're often based around a theme or a concept that you will actually explore. And what is so great about them is they offer what we call an all-inclusive experience. And when we say all-inclusive, we don't mean that in a tacky sort of Club Med sort of way. It's very much all your meals and a range of activities and excursions are included, as well as your accommodation to form part of this program. So not only will you get to stay in a really great hotel, you will get a lot of choice around how you explore the region. So the first type of lodge-based adventure that we can offer, it's called the Laris Cultural Adventure to Machu Picchu. So this one is focused around giving you the ultimate cultural experience of Peru. So you'll stay in a number of remote lodges, one of which is actually operated by a local Andean community. So it's all part of a sustainable tourism initiative where this company has actually, integrated, sort of, I guess, hospitality training and work with a local culture to obviously give them, sort of the means and the skills to actually sort of look after themselves as well as these properties themselves. So it's a really good opportunity to interact and learn from these villages and also to discover some of the most rarely visited sites around. So what's really special about this is that you'll be traveling from place to place and at times where there aren't many other tourists around. So the Laras Valley itself is incredibly scenic, and that means it'll feel a lot more personal. So instead of running into tourists everywhere that you go or having to wait in line to actually visit a site or a ruin, you'll actually feel like you'll get a lot of the wilderness to yourself, sort of like what you'll see in this picture. Um, the Laras-based adventure offers a 5 or a 7-day program, and an overnight trip of Machu Picchu is included in that. So you'll spend the first 3 nights sort of in different regions of the Sacred Valley, interacting with different villages, and then your final night will include you staying in Aguascalientes and exploring Machu Picchu before you head back. The great thing about this program is that every day you get to choose, and they'll have sort of on each day you'll have a choice of either doing a cultural type excursion or a more physical and challenging excursion, depending on your fitness levels. So, for example, on one day you might do a sort of a longer, sort of 4 to 5 hour trek through, sort of unknown places in the Sacred Valley. And then the next day you can choose, well, actually, you know what, I kind of want to recover from, sort of the day before. So I'd rather just spend it, sort of doing an easier and more culturally focused activity. So that way, the program not only caters for all types of people in terms of how their level of fitness or anything like that, but it can also be kind of made to be unique to your interests, depending on what's coming each day. So there's a lot of flexibility and choice in that one. Now, the next lodge-based adventure program is at a hotel called the Explora Valle or Explora Valle Sagrado, which is basically just Spanish for Sacred Valley, but it sounds a lot better. So the Explora Valle program is focused on combining the best of luxury and adventure in the Sacred Valley. So it's the newest lodge by a brand called Explorer. So if you have not heard of them or aren't familiar with them, they pioneered the operation of luxury hotel and lodges in some of the most remote destinations in South America on an inclusive basis. So their approach is all about giving you maximum choice in terms of activities and hikes. They offer, different activities to suit everyone from beginners to advanced level, while staying in maximum style and comfort. There are more than 20 different excursions that you can choose from, including everything from long range hiking and mountain biking to just, a vehicle excursion that will take you to where you need to go, and then you can just experience and wander for yourself. The hotel also has a luxury bathhouse spa on site. So the adventure here is still elegant, with beautiful suites and gourmet food and wine options, all included as part of your stay. And it's perfect for those of you in terms of travelers looking for challenging hiking or mountain biking explorations, or an indulgent, luxurious stay in incredibly scenic setting. As you can see the window out there, some gorgeous views already. Now, this program doesn't include Machu Picchu, but you can add it as a full day to your final day of your program. So, very easy to do because, once again, based in the Sacred Valley. Now, the second way to reach Machu Picchu, and the one that usually comes to mind, is to get there on foot as part of a trekking adventure. Now, what makes trekking such an attractive option is that the scenery in this part of the world is absolutely sublime. Um, and there are also a number of different environments that you will uncover too, depending on which trek you decide to actually do. There are different options that most of them will travel past incredible mountains. Some will go through other less known Inca ruins and sites. Uh, Others will mean that you will see things like glaciers, cloud forests, orchids, and there's varying wild and bird life and an incredible diversity of plants and fauna too that you might come across. However, because of the altitude, trekking to Machu Picchu can prove challenging for some, so training is definitely recommended beforehand. I wouldn't advise that you don't train for something like this, but there are also a number of different options to choose from here as well. So the 4-day Inca Trek is considered the classic Inca Trek. This is the most famous of all the trails to Machu Picchu. It's based on the original route that the explorer Hiram Bingham used to find the lost city of Machu Picchu way back in 1911. So the Inca Trail is the only one to finish through the Inca Sun Gate in Machu Picchu. So you will have a totally different view of arriving into the ruins themselves than many of the other actual programs. The Inca Trek is considered hard to challenging, with up to 10 hours walking on the hardest day. The toughest day is the second day, and you will reach heights up to 4,200 meters above sea level. So, yes, once again, high altitude. Because of high altitude, we recommend staying in Cusco or the Sacred Valley at least 2 nights before you attempt something like this. This Inca Trek will involve camping for your sleeping arrangements, and there are very limited spaces of 500 people on this trail per day. That's 500 people, including things like porters and chefs that join most adventures, and that's worldwide too. So you will need to purchase a permit, and we definitely recommend you do this well in advance. 3 to 6 months in advance, depending on when you want to travel. For example, September is a very, very busy time, so we recommend you start purchasing, your Inca Trail permits well in advance so you don't miss out. And an important thing to remember, and it might sound like a really silly thing, but obviously you have different levels in terms of people, in terms of the people that actually conduct and operate these treks. Something that we try and include definitely through our providers, and something that we recommend that people consider when choosing an Inca Trail provider. But an important thing is whether they have access to their own toilets. It might seem strange, but there are toilets that are on the trail themselves, so sort of, I guess, public toilets along the way that you can stop at. But these aren't the most pleasant because, as mentioned before, there are probably 500 people a day who go through them. So it's kind of like being at a really bad event or festival. The toilets will kind of feel like that. So our partners, they supply their own chemically composting toilets, which will be available only to your group. So not only will you be more comfortable in this regard, but it's also a sustainable option that doesn't impact the environment in any bad way because it all just comes with us as we travel, which is the best way really to trek. Now, the next option is a 5-day Inca Trek program. This is the preferred Inca Trek options for our travelers. Essentially, this follows the same route as the 4-day Inca Trek that we were just talking about, and it also does head into the ruins through the Sun Gate. But on day 4, you'll head down to Aguascalientes, the town below Machu Picchu, and stay overnight. On your final day, you'll return to Machu Picchu again. So you'll actually get to visit it twice in a way. And the other advantage is that after reaching these magnificent ruins, you can relax for the night, shower and rest, and the next day have more time to take it in. So that's the main advantage. The disadvantage with this track, of course, is that you do need an extra day. So if you're thinking that you're going to obviously spend a couple of nights acclimatizing in Cusco, then adding 5 days for an Inca track as well, it means you need a fair amount of time in this world, in this part of the world to make it work. But when it comes to staying overnight in this with this trek, you can choose to stay in Aguascalientes, the town below Machu Picchu. There's a bus that has to be caught down to get you down there, but that's included as part of your program. And there are numerous options in this town, so everything from 3 to 5 stars to choose from. So these are a couple of hotels that we use. So this one on the right is the Inglaterra Machu Picchu, which is a good 4-star option. Alternatively, if you have a larger budget, there is only one hotel that's located just outside of the entrance of the ruins themselves. This one is the Belmont Machu Picchu Sanctuary Lodge Hotel. One thing to bear in mind with this hotel is that there are no rooms with views of the site itself, just kind of because of the position of the site. Um, but there are views and terraces like this one of the surrounding mountains. The next option, trekking option that we've actually got to Machu Picchu is actually called the Luxury Inca Trail. So, what could actually make your Inca Trail experience even better than the ones that we've discussed? We offer a VIP luxury Inca Trail service, which will not only be operated exclusively for you and your traveling group, whereas probably both the options that we mentioned before, well, they can be done in a private exclusive basis, but they will generally be done in a shared basis with other travelers as well. Whereas the luxury Inca Trail is completely private for you and either your travel partner or your group or your friends. But the other great thing about this luxury Inca Trail is that you'll have, upgraded amenities. So things like premium sleeping bags, larger tents with brands such as the North Face and things like that. So you'll have additional comfort. But you'll also have the convenience of a masseur to massage you after your daily hikes for your first 3 days, including that really long second day that we were mentioning before. So they'll be there to help you iron out any kinks and muscle soreness and get you ready for the next day's trekking. Sounds pretty nice. It's a great way to have to, if you want to do the trek, to actually do it and actually feel good at the same time. So this program is the same as the 5-day trek that we just talked about, but just with those additional upgrades, and is available on special request. The next trekking option we have is the short Inca Trail. This is a great option because it allows you to get a taste of the regular Inca Trail that we've been talking about, but you don't have to camp. So, which is something that puts a lot of people off because whilst they may want the physical challenge, they don't necessarily want to rough it that much. Of course, this short Inca Trail is shorter by its name. And it's also great because you may not have as much time to spend. Like we're talking about beforehand, if you're going to spend 2 nights in Cusco before you actually do your trek, it means that you need a lot of time if you want to do a trekking option. Now, this program is shortened in a way that you will have a longer train journey at the beginning to take you to your starting point. It'll drop you further along the route, but it still includes a solid day of hiking before and overnight in Aguascalientes. The following morning, you'll visit the ruins themselves before boarding the afternoon train back to Cusco or the Sacred Valley, depending on where you wanted to stay. So the day that is included, so it's really just one day of hiking and then one day of catching the train back, can be quite challenging, but it's not as bad as sort of the 10-hour walking that we were talking about before. So this trek is only conducted on a private basis, which means that it is exclusive for you and your traveling party, which also means that while it can be physically take a bit more out of you, you are able to go at a pace that will work for you a little bit better because the program will be just for you and whoever you're traveling with. Now we have a number of other different combined treks that will combine different regions in Peru with Machu Picchu. So, as we mentioned, the Laris Lodge-based program before, which is based in this scenic valley, we also have a trek that explores this gorgeous region and the communities that live within it on the way to Machu Picchu. So once again, this region is all about the Quechua locals. So Quechua is the language spoken by many of them. And it's all about your interactivity with the Andean peoples. So as part of this journey, you'll visit the villages of Patacancha and Willock, which are both quite famous for their elaborate textiles, as well as traverse the scenery of the Cordillera, the mountain range of Urubamba. You'll go past hot springs and lakes before reaching Ollantaytambo, which was that funny name station we talked about before, where you will then board the train to Machu Picchu for your excursion. This regular trek is 4 days, but just like we can add an overnight, just like with the Inca Trail, you can add an overnight in Aguascalientes to make it a 5-day adventure. So you can stay overnight, wash, have a shower, relax, and then comfortably go back to Cusco. The next combined trek is the Salcantay to Machu Picchu route. Now, the Salcantay uses an alternative route to both the classic Inca Trail or the Laris Trail. So you're just going in a different direction, covering different scenery. But it's basically considered to be, sometimes more scenic than the Inca Trek, which is probably a little bit more famous and exclusive. So the highlight of this route is traveling through the ice-capped Mount Salcantay, which is this one, enormous mountain, gorgeous actually, and Mount Wamantay, which is another one that we've got. On this trip, you will go past gorgeous glacier lakes, indulge in the hot springs at Santa Teresa, and you will even go through the ruins of Lactapacta before reaching Machu Picchu. So what you're going to come across is really diverse. The trek involves 3 nights of camping, one night at a hotel in Machu Picchu, and can be conducted on a shared basis with other guests or private and exclusive just for your traveling party. Now, we've also got a really special combined trek. So it's kind of a luxury Salcantay mountain lodge trek. So it will cover a similar region to what we were talking about before, but it's a special program because it combines the best of staying in sort of these little mountain lodges as you cover this incredibly scenic route to Machu Picchu. So you can, it's sort of the ultimate balance. So it's like it's a trekking experience, a challenging one. I won't say that it isn't, but you won't have to rough it because you'll actually be able to stay in sort of, mountain lodges like this. So it's often called the Salkantay Lodge to Lodge trek. We also refer and use it in our program that we call it the Lux Machu Picchu Mountain Trek. And it follows a similar trail as before. So, but we have a couple of extra days of hiking. We'll still visit Mount Salkantay, visit a glacier lake at Wamantay, stop at hot springs, etc. But we'll be staying at lovely mountain lodges along the way. The lodges are exclusive to this trekking program, so it's only the people that use this that go on this program can actually stay in the lodges themselves. So it's not like anybody can just stay in them. They often have great settings and even jacuzzis, so you can have the thrill and adrenaline of an awesome hiking experience but remain absolutely comfortable. Now, this program, so this itself is a picture of Lake Wamantai, which is beautifully scenic. You can see the turquoise colored, sort of glacier lake there, very scenic. This is a jacuzzi at one of the lodges. I think it's Lukma Lodge, but I'm not sure. And the great thing is there's even an equestrian version of this program. That's it here. So if, horse riding is something that you're into and you're quite experienced in, you can actually follow the same route, but do it as part of a horse riding journey, staying in the mountain lodges as well. So it's definitely a pretty special experience. Okay, so our next combined trek is Choquequirao. Yes, that's a bit of a mouthful to say as well. Choquequirao and Machu Picchu. So whilst Machu Picchu is an amazing place, one of the criticisms or elements that surprise some people is how busy it is. So whilst the ruins are definitely large enough and have the capacity for it, just to let you know, approximately 2,500 people visit the site each day. Yeah, that's a lot of people. So if you're someone who wants a more off the beaten track kind of experience, a great way to see Machu Picchu would be to combine it with another lesser known archaeological site. So these pictures are taken of Choquequirao, which translates to Cradle of Gold. Um, it's often considered a sister site to Machu Picchu because there are quite a few similarities between this ruin. However, Choquequirao was only discovered in the 1970s, so it is much less known about and visited than Machu Picchu. Um, there are still some parts that you might see that are still being excavated as we speak. This 7-day combined trek starts with Choquequirao first, and this was actually it's theorized to have been built as a rival estate to Machu Picchu. And then you continue on a scenic journey through the mountain valleys and along various rivers, cloud forest, and thermal springs before reaching Machu Picchu. So it's a good way to get a really off the beaten track experience, but still see Machu Picchu. So it offers a bit of a different sort of program. The last combined trek that we will actually talk about is called Vinicunca, and it's a 5-day Vinicunca and Machu Picchu program. So it's an interesting option. I mean, of late, Vinicunca, it's often referred to as Rainbow Mountain, specifically because of its striking and colorful mountain backdrop. Now, this mountain is accessible from Cusco and is a 2-day return journey to reach it. It's considered quite physically challenging because it's 5,030 meters above sea level. Yes, high altitude again. Now, this trek actually goes in a different direction than Machu Picchu, so in order to combine it, you'll need to start in Cusco, do a loop out, do this return, and then continue on to Machu Picchu by train usually. So this is definitely an amazing journey, but it's best left for the more adventurous and physically capable among us. It's very off the beaten track, not somewhere that a lot of people go, but it's someplace that's getting a lot more recognition just because the photos and it looks visually stunning. So it definitely is an option and can be combined with Machu Picchu as well. So there you have more than 10 different ways to experience Peru's most marvelous historic site of Machu Picchu. It's a lot to get your head around and a lot of different options, and they're all kind of suitable for different kinds of people. So I guess the question is, how do you choose which is the right option for you? So these are what we would consider the key factors to determine your ideal experience to Machu Picchu. And realistically, anywhere in South America, these are good questions to be asking yourself. So the first factor to help you determine your ideal experience is to get clear on your intention. Why are you traveling to Machu Picchu? What is it about Machu Picchu that has made you interested in it and made you want to go there? It's a really important question to ask. It might seem like a really obvious or silly question to ask yourself, but the more that you can get clear on sort of what it is that actually interests you about Machu Picchu, the easier a lot of the other questions and sort of narrowing between one choice or the other will actually be. So it's always a good question to start with and really sort of delve deep. Don't just say, oh, because it looks amazing. Just have a real good think about that question and sort of what it actually means for you to travel to Machu Picchu, about, how long have you wanted to travel there and why did you even think about going there in the first place? So that's the first thing to start off with. So when to travel to Machu Picchu is the next step after you know where and why you want to travel somewhere. For most of us, the question of when is more flexible than others, depending on your schedule, when you can get holiday leave, etc. Whatever else is going on in your life. Um, but the question of why is really important because there are different seasons for traveling to Machu Picchu. So between May to October is considered the dry season in Machu Picchu. And November to April is considered the wet or rainy season. This is most important, uh, particularly if you want a trekking adventure, just because obviously it will be a little bit tougher trying to trek during the rainy season, a little bit more slippery, all that sort of thing. And the other thing, it's actually worth remembering too that if you really want to do the Inca Trail trekking route, it's actually closed during the month of February because of maintenance. So if you want to do the Inca Trail, February is not a good time to attempt it. So that's why it's important to sort of get a gauge on when you are actually able to travel. Now the next question is, how much time do you have for your Machu Picchu experience? So, your visit to Machu Picchu might be part of a larger program in South America, so your time may be restricted. And as you've seen, there's so many different programs, they've all got varied lengths. You might need time in Cusco beforehand or the Sacred Valley. Um, so, this is a part of the world. It's definitely not worth rushing Machu Picchu if you can help it. Not all of us can, we've all got different experiences, but I mean, Machu Picchu, because of the high altitude and the distance that you'll be covering, it makes it sort of a longer stay is necessary just to make it work. But also, you've got a number of different exciting and interesting things that are available in the surrounding city of Cusco and the Sacred Valley. So, the more time you can spend here, the better. But obviously, this will depend on what you actually want to do as well. The next question to ask is, what kind of comfort level would you like? And it's good to be really honest here too. As seasoned travelers, most of you will know what your level of comfort will be when it comes to hotel stars, usually. It's always worth thinking about what you can and can't live without. And remember this when picking your program. An important thing to note is that sometimes hotel standards in Latin America can be a little bit lower than what you would expect in the West. Some hotels will present or advertise themselves as 4-star, but we like to keep things in line with what travelers would expect. And maybe but boutique South America, we'd only consider it a 3 or a 3.5 star. And we'll be quite honest with you about that because we don't want you to come back disappointed. Not all hotel rooms will include coffee and tea making facilities, which is something that's quite standard here. Um, but there may be communal areas that you can access things like that. It's also a good idea to remember to request a non-smoking room, as different countries in South America still have different regulations about this. And the final question to ask yourself is, can you make your experience better? So this is the probably question that separates most trips to Machu Picchu as your standard Machu Picchu trip to something that can actually really be, what you want it to be. So this question goes hand in hand with the first question of what's your intention to travel to Machu Picchu? Because it challenges you to think about what it is that you really want and maybe see how you can add this to your program to take it to the next level. Some examples include, so for example, if you're into history, you could spend a night in Cusco to give you enough time to wander through the various museums in town. If you like landscapes or photography, the Sacred Valley would be an amazing place for you to stay and actually explore. If you're into adventure or extreme sports, obviously you've got the various treks that we've mentioned. But there are even things like mountain biking or horse riding or whitewater rafting tours and excursions available out of Cusco or the Sacred Valley. So there's lots of different ways to see things. If you love food, you could add dinner at a museum or a great local tapas place and learn about the local gastronomy, which Peru is actually quite famous for. If culture is more your thing, you can visit a Quechua community and you can either learn weaving, or take Spanish lessons from them. If you love art, it's well worth visiting the Cusco Cathedral or some of the other museums that are there. And maybe even going to somewhere like, the Museum of Contemporary Textiles, so you could actually learn about, how each one of the different textiles and colors actually becomes, quite symbolic of the different Andean regions people are. There are so many options or ways to upgrade your journey and give it that personal touch. So it's definitely worth thinking about, how you can make your journey more about yourself and based around your interests. So if you want to personally chat about making your ultimate Machu Picchu experience the best it can be, we've got journey specialists on hand to help you create this. And because at Boutique South America, we'd love to get you to Machu Picchu sooner rather than later. We've got a number of different incentives that apply to all our trips to Peru for anyone who's actually watched this webinar. We're starting off by giving every booking of Peru for the remainder of the year a free over in Santiago. Because the thing about traveling to Peru is that sometimes it's hard to make it all the way there without needing to stop somewhere else in South America first, because in Australia, the distance is considerable. Obviously, you've got different flying times or connections to deal with. Often, this will mean you will have to stay in Santiago anyway. So we get this all adds up, and we want to make sure it's even easier for you to get to Peru. So we're throwing in this free stopover, and it's valued at $250 per person. And it includes transport, one night accommodation in Santiago, and a free shared walking tour. Now is a really great time to be thinking about South America too, as we currently have some sale fares. And we can get you into Lima in Peru, where you'll probably need to start some of our programs, from as little as $2,070 for travel completed by November this year. This is a special that's available until the 30th of June, and there are limited places, of course, but it's well worth having an idea of sort of obviously how much flights will cost as well. Plus, we'll be giving bonus offers on every single one of our Peru programs that covers Machu Picchu as well. So, with the Short Inca Trail, every booking of the Short Inca Trail gets a free wine prize pack with a bottle of red and white wine valued at $50. With our luxury Inca Trek to Machu Picchu, which is that one that offers the free masseuse, how great does that sound? You'll get one free night in Cusco, plus an evening dinner to discover the best of Peruvian fusion cuisine, valued at US $311 per person. With the Lux, Lima, Cusco, and Machu Picchu trek, which encompasses the Salcantay Lodge to Lodge mountain program, you can save up to $1,000 and will on select departures, so particular dates for travel during the rest of the year. And you'll also get a free massage as part of your trek, valued at $100. With the Laris Cultural Program, which is one of those lodge-based experiential stays, you can save up to $800 when you book one of these programs. Specifically, there's $600 off the 5-day program or $800 off the 7-day program. And we'll also throw in an extra night at Mercado Tunki, which is a great 3.5 to 4-star hotel realistically, valued at US $145 per person. If you choose to stay at Explorer Valle Sagrado for a really unique luxury experience, um, when you book a 5-day, 4-night program, we'll give you your Machu Picchu extension for half price. Now, our Lima, Cusco, and Machu Picchu program and Lima Southern Amazon and Cusco programs are, I guess, are basic programs of this region when you're wanting to travel there by including your train service. And we're giving you $350 flight credit to use towards your flight in Peru when you purchase any of these levels. And each of these we have bronze, silver, gold, and platinum level hotels that you can actually choose from. Now, Indulge in Peru is our ultimate extravagant and indulgent tour of Peru, including 5-star and beyond 5-star stays in Lima, Cusco, Machu Picchu, as well as a boutique Amazon River cruise. If you book this program, we will give you $1,200 flight credits towards premium economy fares into Lima as part of your journey. So essentially, you'll get a premium economy airfare for less than you would normally pay for return economy flights into Peru. That's a great saving there. And here's how to make it happen. You can click on this link or the button below the screen to start making an inquiry. Fill in some details to start with, and a journey specialist will be in touch over the next couple of days and find you your ideal Machu Picchu option. All these specials are only valid until the 3rd of July, so you've only got a couple of weeks to make the most of them. So they will expire at the close of business on the 3rd of July. But we've also, any of the ones that we mentioned that have got airfare specials, they expire on the 30th of June, and spaces will probably go quickly. So you will need to get in quick so you don't miss out. We'll be sending this link out to you via email and dropping it in the chat section of the webinar as well that you can see. And this is valid for all bookings for traveling until the end of the year and into 2019 as well. So some really great savings, really good reasons to actually start thinking about Machu Picchu. And I just wanted to take this opportunity to thank you for taking the time to stay on this call, particularly if you've made it all the way to the end. Um, Actually getting knowledge and about your travel research can take a little bit of time. So we really wanted to sort of put something together that would explore Machu Picchu in depth because it's such an amazing place to go. And we really appreciate your time in actually, getting involved and getting interested about traveling to this amazing place. And we hope to be able to actually be able to get you there ASAP. So that's it. Goodbye for me for now. Chuck any questions that you have into the chat box, and I'll probably stay live for a few minutes, or aim to get back to you via email if we can. Otherwise, yeah, or you can head to our website and check out some of our Peru programs as well. We'll be sending that all to you in an email very shortly. Thanks again.